All right, welcome to another episode of the Critical Introverts podcast. I'm your host, Senor Filth, and we have my co-hosts, Benevolent Asshole and Nate Kapnicky, and we're just gonna chat about. I think something I'm kind of curious about. And a lot of people are also curious about is just the how can religion and sexuality kind of coexist, and this kind of came about with this Dodger protest, or it's a I'm not sure if it was a Catholics and Christians or just Catholics or maybe combination of both protesting the Sisters of what's it called Sisters of Indulgent Perpetual Indulgence being awarded something in Dodger Stadium for some kind of I don't know what the hell they're awarded for, but it caused this big protest and I've been sort of noticing over the years, like this belief or this kind of popular notion that religion and sexuality kind of are somehow at odds with each other, but I don't believe that for a second. I think they do kind of they do complement each other. It's just there's something about I've noticed that it seems like when you take the responsibility of sex away, it kind of it takes away from what sex is supposed to be for, and then therefore like the spirituality aspect of it kind of gets drowned out, and now you have like these two opposing sides, and I'm just kind of curious as to what how we can let's just jump off with that. I guess what do you guys think about this whole
Well,
fucking thing?
I think before we move forward, I think we need to address and
Mm-hmm.
isolate the original idea. Why? I think it was called the Perpetual Nuns of Indulgence, or what
The
was the
sisters of perpetual indulgence.
indulgence? Okay,
Yeah.
so they were invited, right,
Mm-hmm.
initially. Okay, and then the reason why they were uninvited was because of how they were disrespecting the Catholic and sort of like Christian community, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the visual sort of displays of dancing on the crosses and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important that we isolate that and kind of highlight over that that's the reason
Mm-hmm.
why they were uninvited. I
Mm-hmm.
think over time, because they re-invited them back, the that original idea gets lost
Mm-hmm.
because now it's kind of like they're purposely instigating the situation by saying, "Oh, it's because you guys are anti-LGBT." No, that's not the original idea. The original idea is because you were disrespecting a large portion of the Dodger community that is Catholic and
Yeah,
Christian.
that's that. Like when I first heard about them being invited for the first place, I was just like dumbfounded. Like everyone who lives in LA knows that the Hispanic community is really our big Dodger people. So it's like, and then Hispanics are also very religious. They're very Catholic. So why the hell invite? And
Because they
even
purposely did it on purpose to instigate it, because they kind of it's the same thing that they did in Florida, where they're like, "Oh yeah, we're for this. Oh no, we're not." It's just kind of like they kind of
mhm,
get both sides to get mad at each other. So they kind of put it out there just so they can make the Christians and Catholics seem like they're
yeah,
um homophobic, and then you know what, you guys are homophobic.
yeah,
We're gonna let the gays and the trans back in because you guys are fucking bigots and this. So it's like an easy way to admit them, even
yeah.
though they're disrespecting the other side.
It's just
It's just like an easy it's
yeah,
like a lubricant to it's the same tactics over and over
yeah,
again. It's the same patterns.
yeah.
That's why I like that's why I like have you guys ever checked out David Paulides?
No.
He's like a
I don't think so.
missing 411 guy that he has these different profile points
Hmm.
of why people disappear, and it's always like a pattern. It's always the same. It tends to be the same pattern where after they disappear, there'll be this event of thunderstorms or rain or snow for days, and they can't find the person.
Mm.
Or and then another profile point will be they'll search the area over the same area over and over, maybe 10 times, and they won't find them. And then later on they'll appear in that same area. And there's a few other profile points that
Mm-hmm.
are very similar in these missing person cases. And it's the same thing with politics and everything else. It's like all these patterns that kind of repeat themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and people keep doing it over and over. It's like, well, people, you guys got to pick up on these patterns. So the
Yeah.
same thing that they did with the Dodger thing is the same thing that they did with the whole "Don't Say Gay" bill, even though it was never called a "Don't Say Gay" bill. That's like smart advertising
Yeah.
from one side.
Right.
When it was just like that whole thing was more going over the heads of
Yeah.
parents that wanted to know what they were teaching in school. It had nothing to do with them being homophobic or them not letting people say don't or gay or
Yeah.
use the word gay.
I
So
just
it's the same thing they're doing over here with the whole Dodger thing.
I just wonder like whose decision it was to like okay this, because like I mean,
Devil.
it's like I understand, you know, if you want to make a Pride Night presentation kind of thing, but you literally you pick the worst of it. It could have been any other like a you know a lesser extreme representation of homosexuality, whatever you want to call it, but it's almost like this minstrel show extreme kind of thing. But on top of that, oh, they're also mocking the religion of that's a large fan base. Like on a marketing level, to me, it is the most retarded thing. And whoever okayed that in the Dodgers organization needs to be just fired for just a bad decision. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make sense to me on that level. But you know,
Well, the way I'm seeing it, I mean, yeah, I agree with Benevolent Asshole that the
Mr. Benevolent Asshole.
Mr.
Yeah.
Benevolent Asshole. Sorry. But I agree. It's just, I mean, it's all just instigation, you know,
Mhm.
because it's what I keep saying over and over and over. Keep getting people divided. Keep getting people divided. All you got to do with Christians is, you know, burn their cross or jump on their cross or
Yeah.
start dancing around as the devil or just doing sexual acts in front of them or doing anything that goes against the religion
Hmm.
that is you know um basically mocking them.
Yeah.
And then, you get a rise out of them and you get them wanting someone to do something about it. And it just, all it does is bring in more government. All it does is bring in more attention on, some kind of bully tactic. And, I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. I mean, look at, Target is one of the things that's just happened. You look at all the Christians and Catholics that have got upset about that.
Hmm.
Same thing with you know the Bud Light thing. All the children that are in these schools with these drag queens doing all kinds of uh, you know
Yeah.
basically porn dances. um, it's just it's all to because they know they're going to get the rise, and they're getting the rise. That's
Yeah.
what they want. And I mean, it's hard to pinpoint who they are,
Yeah.
but you just have to understand that these people are dark. They're dark people. They want the control. They want the minds to go in a certain direction to get our minds off of something else. And they just put this stuff right in our face every time. And it's always taken our mind there. I mean, it's just um it's pulling on the heartstrings constantly, and especially with the children involved.
Yeah.
And it's awful what they're having to endure with all this. But we have to really see all the patterns and see why they're doing this. That's the real question, why. And
Yeah, that's a good question.
yeah, I
Like,
mean,
what's the end goal? That's the thing with the LGBT movement. What's the end goal? What's going to make them happy? And the thing
Well,
is, there
I
is none.
yeah. Well, there is. It's just they don't. They never thought about. Me and Jordan talked about this, like this idea of like usually left-leaning people, they think more in just like in the present kind of time, like, oh, it feels good right now, blah blah blah. The right-leaning, whatever you want to call it, they think more in like long-term, kind of like, okay, well, maybe you're enabling some kind of behavior that societal, or maybe for a specific individual within 20 years, it's going to be kind of a destructive behavior, but they don't think in those terms. And I'm not sure, like, maybe it's a personality trait that we just think in those terms, and they can't comprehend that. But I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I want to add to what you're saying,
Mhm.
because one of the biggest reasons is because, see, we have this problem where because if you're an atheist and you're more on the left, and you're more um, against the religious people on the right, being
Yeah.
the Christians and Catholics, you're more likely to think in terms of some kind of ethics, but it's a social ethics, which means like we get to decide what rights are,
Mhm.
right? To where the right wing is more of, well, we understand, people from the right wing, they understand that rights come from the creator, to some extent. That's how they think.
Mhm.
But see, if we can really see the bigger picture, we'll understand that it's not, rights don't come from religion itself, from any institution. They
Mhm.
don't come from man. And once we understand that, that's how we're going to get both sides to align. And that's what the problem is on the left, is they associate morality with religion, therefore they throw morality out and
Mhm.
just act a fool.
Yeah.
They're very hedonistic, a lot of them, and they're very, they just don't really care what they don't have values or principles. But
Yeah.
then you have the right wing, who's more, they tend to be more religious, and they do have remnants of principle and value. And but then they get too extreme in their religion, where they're ready to kill for Jesus. And it's just like, well, now we have to remember, well, what is true morality? you know because if we don't understand what true morality is, and we're just going based off of like what some guy just says, this is what right and wrong are, and you need to listen to me, I'm the authority. Well, for one, that person needs to describe what a right and wrong are, and see if it makes sense. You have to decide what makes sense, not no one else can decide that for you. You have to use common sense to understand what a right is.
Yeah.
You have to understand that a right is an action that doesn't cause harm to another person, another being. And so once we understand that, then we understand that this is why this debauchery is taking place in this left-wing mentality. And it's because they associate morality with uh with religion, and therefore the right wing. So once we see that it's all in a box, they place people in a box like that, then you'll understand it's they never will want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
They'll never want anything to do with anything good. And and that's not saying that the right wing is totally good, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of issues.
Yeah.
But the problem is that disconnect from morality is not, it does not come from institutionalized religion. It does not come from Abrahamic doctrine. Any of the three major religions, or any of the major religions, but especially does not come from Christianity, does not come from Islam, does not come from Judaism. And once we understand what that truly means and why that is, then we're going to start to really see that we can actually start to bring people into more of a an understanding of how to behave and how our behavior affects other people negatively, and why we need principles, or why principles exist, or why values are a good thing. You know,
Yeah,
it's
that's
difficult.
yeah, that's
The right's temperamentally inclined to look towards traditional wisdom, and the tried and true over many generations for a guidance, uh, sort of culturally. If it's worked before, then it should work going forward. It's pretty standard. It's built into the biology almost of conservatism, the way they think, and so they have that longer term perspective that Senor Filth was articulating.
Mhm.
Right.
That's a huge advantage. But to my boy up there's point, um, you can get too locked into your principles and become
Mhm.
too close minded and not evolve the sophistication of your principles with new information and with new challenges. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that like the tried and true stops working. It's just you have to have a sophisticated sense of what that would look like. And yeah, the left wing is more inclined to have that sort of uh, if we make it the law, then it's the law. So like
Mhm.
rights are what we can make them out to be. If you just change the language to entitlements, you sort of pull back a lot of the charged tribal BS language because it's just like for better or worse, whatever we're talking about entitlements like rights in the traditional sense. So again, kind of with a right wing bias, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, rights are defined as things that are intrinsic to the universe around us that came from the creator that exist absent any institution or any decree of man. And that's why the Constitution is designed the way it is. Freedom of religion, you cannot dictate the God with the God that a man worships. Like you literally cannot choose that for him or change it with
Mhm.
force. A man's speech, if unencumbered with violence, he's always going to have his own thoughts. You're just getting in the way of being able to see those thoughts by using force to tamper with freedom of speech. But it's a concrete aspect of reality that they understood and cemented in our structure. The right to self-defense,
Yeah.
the right to uh, the fact that an accusation does not make you guilty is innocent until proven guilty. Like by definition, like it's a part of reality. An accusation does not make it so.
Yeah.
Um, that's where the long-term power comes from, understanding those deeper principles, and it is just the nature of reality that we're talking about. We're not hiding it behind smoke and mirrors and any specific religious language. It's just like, no, this is the way it works, and you got to know that to operate more effectively.
Mhm.
Um, and
Have any of you guys, because I haven't really followed that much, what do you call it, like news, reporting on this thing, because I had an idea that would kind of portray it in a very kind of, you know, oh, these religious people just hate the gays kind of thing. And I do sort of sympathize a bit with like the average person in the gay community that it kind of as it sort of buys into whatever the narrative is, because I mean, like, we all sort of follow, some kind of form of alternative media, and I think the average person just doesn't do that. They never thought to, because they think that something that is mainstream has a merit to it, because they've been given money, all this kind of shit. So, but speaking on that, like that average person, like I do sympathize with them, because if they're just getting fed this one thing, like this, the world hates me kind of bullshit, like they almost in a way feel justified in going extreme just to try to prove this point that doesn't align with reality. I mean, I do think that a lot of this shit just like I it sounds like a broken record kind of thing, but like I do think a lot of this is just at blame with just the media in general, uh and it's really hard to convince people that, like, the mainstream media isn't trustworthy. Like, it just, whatever the narrative that they're spitting out, maybe consider that the opposite might be true, or something closer to the opposite might be, closer to reality. I think that's a lot of like why the pride shit has gone haywire, is because these are people that I think are well intentioned, but if they're just stuck in this world where like they're being fed like this very, scripted kind of shit of like, the world hates you because you're gay, and we're going back to the dark ages, and in reality people are just getting annoyed. They're just, so I don't know, like I see them being like weirdly, like I said, it's this thing where they're in their world, they're justified in pushing stronger, and I don't see how it changes if you can't convince people to at least look into some kind of form of alternative media in the least. 'Cause, like, I mean, I haven't really followed mainstream media, just like news format, like the mainstream format, like the 6 o'clock news kind of shit. I never liked that format. It always seemed kind of game showy to me, and I just never followed it like that. So from a young age, I would just kind of follow stuff on my own, and it is kind of dorky in one way, and it's tough for people to just get out of that pattern of just 6 o'clock, I have to watch this thing that is reality, and then I go to watching Netflix and all this shit. So like I do very much sympathize with the average person that buys into the stuff, because there's in their world there's no reason for them to like consider the alternative, and it's really fucked up. And,
Yeah, it's part of their mental health.
Mhm.
I think a lot of them are like insecure in themselves, and the
Mhm.
media does a really good job at validating them, making them feel like they're somebody. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, you're somebody. Like, don't let those
Yeah.
right wing or those like terrorists tell you otherwise. Go ahead, go and get that gender affirming care. I was watching recently on the Epoch Times. There's like
Mhm.
a new documentary about the whole transgender thing and gender affirming treatment on younger people,
Mhm.
and it's so quick and like it's not thought through. It seems that they're just getting a lot of these kids because teenagers are like for the most part are like depressed already.
Yeah, it's a
Teenagers are depressed
depressing,
on
confusing time, like
Yeah, it's a
hormones and all this
confusing
shit,
time.
and
So in a lot of these cases that they were talking about, it seemed that they weren't even gay or they weren't even like curious. They're just depressed. They just needed to be heard out.
yeah.
They just need somebody, yeah, to be there for them. But instead, they would turn right away without even like listening to them. They, oh, you know what? Have you ever thought about being the opposite sex? Maybe the reason you're not happy is because you're not happy being a woman. Maybe you should be a boy. And then they're already confused. So they're like in this vulnerable state because they're teenagers or kids.
Yeah.
So that seed is planted early on, and it's a very lucrative like sort of like system where they're like, well, if we can get these kids to start the gender affirming, it's like signing up for like student loans. Like you don't know, you're just kind of like you're just kind of it's very short sighted. You're like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. I'll make some money afterwards.
Yeah.
The same thing with the whole thing with their gender affirming care, even if they're not like castrating or they're like doing anything to them, just by dressing them in a dress. If they're a boy, it's almost you're making that commitment that eventually going down the line they're going to start getting into puberty blockers and then hormones, and it's already it's almost like they've already signed away
Yeah.
their destiny that they're going to go down that route because there's so many people like for validating them to go the opposite direction, even though that in many cases that's not even the case. It's just like they're just pushing it because part of it is the money and part of it is just like it's there's like an agenda there
Mhm.
to push them in that direction, that opposite direction, because they're never going to be happy like no matter what. It's not has nothing to do with your body. It's like a mental thing. No
Yeah.
no no amount of surgery or like physical transformation is going to make you happy. Like you have to mentally be healthy before you can really be physically healthy
Yeah,
on the inside and the outside.
yeah. I
But yeah,
was
that I was gonna say, like that documentary. Like if you look at every stage, they'll be like a half an hour consultation, and they'll be like, you know what, just go ahead, and then they'll shove them over to the surgeon, and the surgeon will look at them for like a minute, like 10 minutes, and then you know what, it's time for to do that top surgery.
yeah.
It's like they're just kind of moving them down the pipeline
Yeah, it's like
without really even thinking about it.
it's like drive through or something like that, you know.
You're making a commitment that's
they're
gonna
making
change,
lifetime
like,
customers.
Yeah.
They're making lifetime customers. It's a
Yeah.
giant gold rush, and this type of thing happens in all sorts of ways. I think there's a great metaphor from the way the Chinese build up their construction industry.
Mhm.
They have about like 90 million apartment units created and destroyed every single year just to create a bunch of jobs. And I think that's a great metaphor for the way a lot of these people go about generating their wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is,
absolutely.
create destruction just to charge up the credit card on some repair.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing people need to pay attention to is like whether like what you think about this whole thing is that think about the geography of like where this is happening. This is happening mostly in the Western world.
Hmm.
Why is that? And I mean, look at
Specifically in conservative areas,
yeah,
ironically. Um, I lived in California, I lived in Utah, and I've lived in Oklahoma. And I don't remember seeing a single trans person or seeing any kind of teenager in person that was like confused about these things. And I've seen, untold numbers between Utah and especially Oklahoma. It seems to be I don't know. That's just purely anecdotal, but I think that's an interesting.
You guys,
thing. I don't think there's any social credit to it. There's not as quite as much as
Mhm.
of a rebellious payoff when it comes to doing it in like California and stuff.
Do you guys think that I was thinking about this earlier, that like the popularity of it would kind of die down if it sort of admitted that it was a religion? You know what I mean? Because I do think of it as like people like, I'm not sure if we touched on it on the episode, but we were talking about it earlier. Like there's this rejection of religion that is becoming so popular. Like every time I watch, anything on television, anytime Christianity or any kind of religion is portrayed, it's always in a negative light. And I think for the average person, they sort of think oh, it's just harmless fun. But over time, if that is all you're getting, just these people bad, the opposite is good. It's like that's gonna like snowball into just.
Eventually, you end up dressing up as Satan at the Emmy Awards, or
I never like
eventually
understood.
you.
Did you see he fell and he was trying to do a whatever, what's that guy's name, Sam Keith or whatever? No, Sam Keith is a comic guy.
Smith.
Sam
Sam
Smith.
Smith, yeah, the devil guy.
Yeah, he tried to do some like what's it called in concerts when you jump in the crowd and they like what's it called, crowd surfing, I think it's called, when they carry you. But I think because he's so fat, he just fell. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Bottom heavy. They tried catching him and they just went.
Well, I never understood like I'm not like super religious. I was raised Catholic. I always bring this up, but the only reason I'm not religious is just because like my parents or like the people around me are not religious. I think I'd be more religious if I had like more people that were like they were more religious. But I never understood.
Religion's like bad food. If your first try is a bad one, you'll not go back again. But
it wasn't.
Some people
it was a little bit.
So they have good blue cheese.
Yeah, but I never understood like when somebody that is gay or somebody that was transgender, like them saying, "Oh, being resentful of God," when it's like, "Oh yeah, God, I hate God," because I mean, God does. I don't think God hates you, regardless of what you think. God does not hate you, but when you become gay, you become a homosexual, you become trans, or you're cutting off your genitals. You're turning your back on God, regardless of what you think. I don't. I'm not saying that
how so would you say?
you're because you're going against nature. God made. I mean, you were made in the image of God.
It's
It's like
a
you're saying. It's like, you know what? Like, I don't like the way that you made me. I'll make myself into. I don't like that you made me into a man. I'll make myself into a woman. Or I know you made me for this. I know, like, you made me into a hammer, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna like knock this nail down. I'm
Yeah.
gonna use it for like some other stuff. You're turning. You're using it. You're using what you were given by God into something else. Something. I mean,
Right.
perverse.
You,
So you're turning your
you can
back.
use
And this is not like
you
an
can use
insult
that.
towards the LGBT community. I'm just saying the truth that they're turning their back on God. So how do you expect somebody? How do you expect God to? I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand like the resentment. You're the one turning your back
Nate, you
on
were
God.
gonna.
well, I mean, there's a lot to this to unpack, but it's about understanding that. Yeah, I agree with Benevolent. It's that we have to understand that we are um, co-created in this body, this form, and it's a it's amazing that we have this ability to be in this avatar, to be to grow with this physical body and
Mhm.
to become conscious of it. And then the thing is that these young children are not even they're not even allowed to have the ability to even become conscious before they, because see, people don't understand how indoctrination works, because so many it's amazing how many people say there's no such thing as any indoctrination with the gay or
Yeah.
LGBTQ community. It's all indoctrination, because it's about understanding that if you can get people to hate themselves at an early age, and but feel like they're getting love from the community
Yeah.
who supports them to mutilate themselves and to not accept themselves. See, that's a cult mentality. One of the main tenets is to make you not accept who you truly are. And so you have to understand that this is it's a massive cult method that's being waged on these young people. And
Mhm.
it's to really get them, not only, but see, it's not just the people who are doing this to themselves, it's the people who support it. And those
Yeah, I
people,
think that's the bigger problem
that
than
is the
yeah,
much bigger problem.
yeah,
And so that's why I don't even like the thing. I know, I tell people this all the time. I don't have a problem with any of the trans people, really,
Yeah.
except for the people who want to push the agenda. But a lot of them that I've met, they're not really trying to push the agenda. They're just trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah.
They have confusion just like everybody else, right? But they have done something physically to alter themselves, or they're really just trying to find themselves, and it's a really wicked way that they're going through. I don't recommend it, but we're all trying to find out who we are. But the people who support you to do whatever is necessary to find that inner peace and that happiness, even if it means not accepting who you are, and just and thinking like this is a good idea. Those people are liars. Those people are 100% liars, and they're liars because they have lied to themselves, and they don't understand the difference between right and wrong. They don't understand that the thing that they're supporting could hurt someone. They don't consider that. In this I wanted to say this, um, in that community, because I come from a major part of that community, not meaning like LGBTQ, but being around it in California, being around people who associated with it. They would tell me that we don't focus on the negative. We only focus on the happiness and the positive of things. And this is something I heard a lot. And this is all part of the new age movement. Only focus on the positive, never focus on the negative. Never. And that doesn't mean like, don't, it doesn't mean go act negative. It just means only look at things on the bright side, never look at things on the negative, and so that causes an imbalance. Whenever we're focused, if like for instance, I used to be heavily into Alex Jones, and I became so negative, and I had no positive, and that created an imbalance in me. And so I had to find that positivity and incorporate that into my life. And when I did, I started to, find my balance. And but the point is that this is used in both ways. So there is this cult of the new age, and they only focus on the positive. And this is part of this acceptance of, just accept how you feel, and your parents are pushing you in a certain direction, or your teachers are telling you it's totally okay to feel like you're trapped in the wrong body, and just lie to them, because it's just positive, be
Yeah.
nice, be happy,
You're
and
talking
it's
about like that dangerous idea of like love is love, right? Kind of like sort of just like
I think it
being
means
very
just like
docile.
I think it just means it's just people that enable the behavior just through it just makes you happy, but they don't think.
no
Yeah.
people with no principle, no
No
value,
boundaries.
no boundaries, just completely whatever makes you happy, go ahead and do it. I'm not gonna try to show you any type of real love where I'm being honest with you and telling you like, look, I'm sorry, dude. You're a guy. You're not a
Yeah.
female. It doesn't work that way. I hate to break it to you. You can hate me all you want, but just remember, you'll remember me in those darkest moments of who was being honest with you and who isn't.
It's an interesting thing that you brought up, like, oh, like we just focus on the happy, and like when I hear people say that, it sounds like to me like we ignore the truth and we accept the lie because
That's
it's
right.
makes us more comfortable, makes us more happy.
That's right.
And um
Yeah,
I
that's
hate
what
to
I
sort
got from
of
it.
I hate to sort of like jump ship or anything like that, but it's kind of reminded me a kind of question I've had, because I don't know if you guys saw that. I think his name is Tim Scott. I think some Republican black senator was on The View, and I'm not making this a View discussion or anything like that, but anyways, like I'm not sure if the lady's Sunny Hostin or whatever the lady's name, like she's doing the typical narrative like black people can stay down and there's systemic racism, and I was thinking like what would you guys think is what would you interpret as being just genuinely evil? Someone who knows what they're doing and is intentionally deceiving people, or someone who can't see that and is driven through emotion, but also someone like Sunny Hostin, like if she considers thinking of that with the more right leaning kind of people, like, going against the narrative, she kind of like goes against her brand, and therefore she loses her job and money. And like, what would you consider to be like worse, someone who does it intentionally, or someone who kind of does it maybe is unintentionally doing it, but won't allow themselves to consider the opposite because like they lose maybe some financial kind of
Well, I think
status
somebody
or social status or something like that.
Well, I think somebody that is doing it intentionally is because they have like benefits from doing it. Like they're like
Mhm,
uh, race hustlers, like
mhm,
Thomas Sowell used to say. But
mhm,
race hustlers, like some of these black advocates that pretend to care about black lives.
mhm,
Yeah, I think they're more dangerous because the amount of people that they're reaching is just like incredible, and they're believing the lies that they're being fed, and they're the only reason they're doing it. They don't care. They're just benefiting from it financially. So I think those to me are more dangerous because of the amount of people that they're reaching.
mhm.
Yeah. Intent, man. Intent is such a interesting thing, because intent can be negative or positive, but intent without principle, intent without value is very, very dangerous, because it is something that comes from ignorance, it comes from apathy, it comes from cowardice. to get your way. It's a very narcissistic position, and it is evil. But intent can also be good if it's based in principle, if it's based in some kind of value. But I always revert back to the saying, "Good intentions pave the way to hell," and that is true. If there is no morality, if there is no true morality, I'm talking what actually is the real law, the real law of attraction, real karmic law, the real golden rule. But this intent though is what these people on on that show, or any of these shows really, but especially on that show, I think we all agree their intent is to not uh try to wake people up, or try to make things better in this world. They're paid. They have owners. They'll do whatever their owner asks them to do, and say whatever they're asked to do.
That's a weird thing, because like, let's say Nate, like, that you were able to make a pretty, you're making good money with your podcast and stuff like that. Like, that sort of assures you that you're in some kind of right path, you're doing something good. But with someone like that, they're spouting out bullshit, but yet they're still getting confirmed that they're right because they're getting financially back. So it's like this weird cycle that is like, I was just thinking, like, is it more evil if like Sunny Hostin, or not, maybe not evil is not the right word. Is it worse if the Sunny Hostin, whatever her fucking name is she knows that she's putting out ideas that are bad for people, and she doesn't care because she's getting paid? Or does she not want to consider the opposite, because if she does, her brand is ruined and she loses her job or whatever? Like, what would you guys?
They're both wrong. They're both wrong. And I get what you're saying, because obviously what we, like, we might feel bad because, some of these people probably do have a gun held to their head in some way. Like, you'll lose everything. You'll lose your pension. You'll lose, you might have family members missing if you say anything, that goes against our narrative. And, that's a tough place to be. But the thing is that if you are part of something like that, you still are guilty if you're continuing to do what you know to be wrong. It's wrong deep down what you're doing, and if you continue to do it and you keep telling yourself like, "Oh, I'm totally in the right, I'm totally fine," and keep lying to yourself, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you've still lied. You're still deceptive. You're still wrong. You're evil. And that's that might sound harsh to people, but it's the truth. But obviously, if you have the intent to hurt people, that's more on the psychopathic level, So
yeah.
To answer your question, I think obviously to choose to do something for the sake of like misleading people or confusing people would be worse than just unintentionally doing it, or doing it naively for self-interest and for money, and just because you're saying yes to your bosses. But I think the reality for her and for many people is a third option entirely, and that's just that they have a certain amount of logic and truth and a little foundation upon which they've established that opinion, and the implications of changing their opinion are too strong. Like I can see a steel-manned argument for why the black community would look at the Republican Party and say there's things inherent in this agenda that don't fit our particular interests compared to other groups, if you want to play that game. And I would also say that to assume that black people have to have any kind of an allegiance, or that they can't have a more nuanced worldview and somehow come down on the Republican side, is also racist, like in its nature. But it's a difficult discussion to have. Like just the simple fact that when it comes to police and issues like qualified immunity and whether or not you sort of blindly support the blue, the men in blue, or if you're saying, okay, there's certain excesses and problems that we need to address, or if you're saying let's get rid of them entirely, like that when the black community is disproportionately poor, has disproportionately negative experiences with cops, it's going to mean something different. So
Yeah.
there's a I think I think many of these people just genuinely have that established worldview. They don't have enough evidence to contradict it or to upheave it. They can't accept the implications of that, because especially many people on the left see the bad guys as Republicans. And I think I've said this before on this program, but Democrats don't trust Republicans. Democrats think Republicans are the bad guy. Republicans don't trust politicians, and Republicans think politicians are the bad guy. And so there's this kind of morality by contrast, and it's easy to be comfortable in we're the good side, we have all the good ideas, they're nothing but a bunch of morons and degenerates, and to be demonized and classified as those crazy evil people. I think it's, like I said, I think the left more directly demonizes the right than the right demonizes the left. It's more so about broader issues. And so, but both sides do it to some degree because it's a comfortable place to sit back into, to be like, man, we have all these answers. If only they would listen to us.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to offer. It's like,
I guess to kind of get back to like the Dodgers thing. Let's just kind of get into like religion and sexuality or sexual pleasure, because I think a lot of just like the pride stuff, like there's this weird disconnect between like if you're religious, that means that like sex has to be boring and you have to have the fucking lights off and you can't have any pleasure because God's watching you and shit like that, and like that is snowballed into what you have. Like it's just like me being someone who like I used to watch porn, like as someone who used to watch porn, I see like the shit that's just out in the streets.
Used to?
I mean, I mean, 5 minutes ago. But anyways,
Dang, you were doing it while we were talking.
Yeah, my phone, it's just
there's a reason why there's
yeah, exactly.
He doesn't want to Jeffrey Tubin all of us.
But
see his shoulder going like this, and you'll know.
But as someone like I grew up, porn was there. I look at stuff that's just like in parades, and I'm like, I'm even like kind of like, dude, come on, can you guys just maybe chill? You know what I mean? And like I don't understand like why people like push back against religion and think that the pushback is to be overtly perverse and like hypersexualized, and as if like there's no coexistence between sex and religion, because like there is a purpose for sex. You know what I mean? Like bottom line, it's for procreation, and there's a kind of connecting with the other person to form this bond, that stuff. But like it's somehow like that's gotten lost, and maybe it's the sexual revolution's fault for like divorcing love from sex. And
they're kind of fighting this implicit assumption that the church fell into, that having sexual desire in and of itself is an immoral thing. Instead of it being that this natural force that you have as a human being that is not your fault for having, it was just given to you. You're a creature, you have to procreate. We're given that basic direction, that we didn't choose. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to channel it in the best way possible and channel it towards the highest purposes. The church, instead of teaching sin as as basically sort of the bad side of human nature that we have to master and then limit within traditional values and principles and living according to what we believe God's will is, instead of it being this sort of gradual thing where there's small sins, bigger sins, and then ultimate sins.
Yeah,
That's a archery term for missing the singular ideal and you could miss by an inch, you could miss by 10 feet. It was taught as there's the good people who are the Christians, and then there's the bad people who are the sinners.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a sinner until you're a Christian, and you're a Christian until, and it's just you were one or the other. So if you were uh, even just a sexualized heterosexual person, just a high sex drive heterosexual person, you were often uh, turned off by the by the Puritans in the
Mm-hmm.
church. It's all things in a very like humans are bad, your nature is bad, you're taint. I grew up with this implicit belief that I was tainted by my sin instead of it was just sort of this neutral nature I was born with that I had to channel for the right things. Very different, sense of your own nature as a human. So I can have a lot of I have a lot of understanding for why, in the name of accepting yourself, accepting the fact that you did not choose the urges and it's not your fault, going so far as to say, well, anything natural is fine, anything sexual is fine, accept all of it,
Mm-hmm.
instead of it just being, the basic accepting of you as a person, and then that covers everything, and then we move on from there. They have to make it all weird.
I really like what you're saying. It's I would even go further and say it's we have these human nature parts, right? Like the sexual energy that we have to procreate, that is a natural thing. How we think about that, though, I would say it's conditioning. And so because we are conditioning, us humans can be conditioned to think a certain way, uh, a lot like a computer can be programmed to have
Mm-hmm.
a processing of some kind of software program. And so we are like that in the sense that we can be programmed to be degenerates, or we can be programmed to, become our better version, which very few of us have ever been introduced to that. But we all have that ability to recondition. That's, um, you know, the awakening, that people talk about, this awakening or this great awakening. It's all about reconditioning ourselves from the indoctrination of this program that we've all been raised into. And so, when we're talking about religion, I think it's important that we break down the word religion to really understand it better, because a lot of people don't really understand that the word religion comes from the word religare, and religare means binding, or to thwart forward progress, to hold down. And so when we really understand this word, and that it really comes deeply from Latin, and understand how Latin, the compounds of Latin, then we're going to understand this word religion. It has two, you can understand it to have two types of meanings when you understand it as binding or religare. So, because we have to understand where these words come from, so that way we understand their original intent. And so, to bind means that, if we're Christian or Muslim, we're bound to the idea of this, this religion to be the thing that we are bound to, or that we're tied to, right? And so what we have to understand, though, is it goes further than that, because religion itself, when you understand it as to bind or to hold back, that means that anything that we become religious about, anything that holds us back in consciousness from moving forward, that is a religion. So, we become religious in a whole bunch of different things when we really understand the word and the context. But this idea, though, about human nature, and conditioning, we have to understand that we are conditioned into many different types of religions. Where there's there's not just institutionalized religions. There's, religion of money, religion of authority, religion of, many different things. But to get into the sexual part, um, people have a religious mindset when they're thinking about sex, because they know that where this leads to, right? But if it's not hurting anyone, if no one's getting hurt, it's not a true sin. It is in the sense of, the church. It is a sin to, marry before marriage, or to have sex before marriage.
Mhm.
And not, I'm not saying all churches feel that way, but the thing is that, you can look at it on paper, look at it with common sense, and you can see there's nothing wrong with having sex before marriage, because for one, most people don't even understand what marriage really means. Most people just think, marriage is just something that goes with the religion that they're part of.
Mhm.
But it's much deeper than that. But the point is people have that low resolution of what marriage is. And so because of that, they don't understand the beauty of sex between male and female. Okay, so they don't understand that. Most of us don't. Okay, and I'm not trying to sound like I know it all, or I'm speaking above. I am sharing with you knowledge that I care about what I'm talking about. I've done deep psychological um, research on this topic alone. But the point is that once we understand that sex is a very sacred act, it doesn't mean that if you have sex with somebody that you're a bad person. That's a religious mindset. That's not. There's nothing right about thinking that way. However, the thinking has to change, in the sense of, if we're going to tell people to not have sex before marriage, we have to understand why. Not just because God says it's a sin. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. And that's why people who are very sexual and divorced from religion, they love to just, it's like they want you to know. If you're religious, they want you to know that they're being perverted and sexual, and doing all the things that go against what God wants, because they're not taught properly. They're not taught what true values or morals are, or sins. They don't understand that, because if you're just telling everybody because God said so, it's like, all right, that's you're never going to reach anybody with that. It's such a turnoff, because it doesn't really like show us why things can get bad, and why so many relationships can get so bad, because they have such a they don't have any kind of foundation, or any kind of principle between their sexual relationship.
Mhm.
They don't care about procreation. They don't care about creation, period, because they don't believe in creation. That's why they're so completely for ending a baby's life before they're born. They don't care about that, because they're so divorced from it, because they've had that religion shoved down their throat so hard that they just rebel against everything. And that's the problem with religion, or institutionalized religion. And because they don't know how to explain things properly. They're very just like, I'm gonna strike the fear of God in you, and it's just like, well, that's lame, dude.
Yeah.
You're such a you're not, you don't have the bigger picture yet. You're a cardinal or a priest, but you're probably getting paid money just to get up there and just talk a bunch of bullshit. And most of them are, because they're not really, they're just explaining the Bible, but they're not really going deep into the realistic side of things. They
Yeah.
don't have that understanding, or they're hiding it. So there's a lot that
And
goes.
the biblical teaching, from any possible perspective, is not follow this institution of man because man never makes a mistake. The message is it's a relationship between you and God. It's how you deal with the source of the structure of the universe. It's a thing. The source of the structure of the universe is a real category. None of us can walk away from that. We
Right.
have to contend with that idea. Israel means to struggle with God, to struggle with that concept. The Bible and the God of the Bible is not, this is our mascot, this is our 49er guy that we got, and then you've got your guy, and we're fighting to see
Yeah.
which guy's the real guy. No, we're saying put all the religions aside, whatever that thing is, let's talk about that.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's what it's
And
supposed
then
to be.
in the Gospels it talks about the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of truth. That's the literal verse. The Holy Spirit is the Spirit of truth.
Right.
So it's saying that idea, one idea. Now start operating with those implications. We talked about mainstream media and seeing that they occasionally lie or mislead people, and people being afraid of the implications. People are afraid of all sorts of implications
Mhm.
in all sorts of arenas, and the implications of um, dealing with the universe as it is in an honest way, and having a relationship with God rather than simply being a part of an institution or a religion. It's a difficult challenge, but that's what we're being called to do. And the thousands of years of scholars and philosophers on the Bible and other texts are there to help guide us in that process of contending with these deepest questions.
Well
And
said.
it's a lot to deal with. And so
Yeah.
some people just would rather not deal with it at all.
That's right. Very well said. I completely agree.
I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry.
You know it, but and I've
Just kidding.
I've
I
said
tend to drag on sometimes. I
Nah, it's
block
fine.
myself out
I'll
even.
fuck with you,
So.
man.
Yeah, I don't think it's God kind of telling you like, oh yeah, you should do this or you gotta do this or like, I think maybe there's like a little bit of not some people are not good at explaining like religion, but I think it's
It's a
you
discovery
sinning.
process. It's not.
Yeah, I think it's
It's
is
not a
every time you sin,
pamphlet.
the more
You
you
can't give
sin, you're
someone a
kind of
pamphlet and be like, "Here's the secrets of the universe."
Yeah. Go
yeah
ahead.
you're
Go ahead, David.
like you're turning your back on God. Like everything that you do, like anything bad, any sin, you're actually doing it to yourself. It's not you. It's not God doing this to you. You're doing it to yourself. I think that's, in my opinion, like what religion or God, what the whole concept of the having that relationship with God is that you by turning away from God, you're sinning, but at the same time you're going to hell in the sense that you're being controlled. You think that you're getting freedom from sinning because you're like, oh, okay, well, if I listen to God, then I'm kind of being controlled by God and the whole religious institute. They always um, tie the whole church to it, but it's not that. It's like more spiritual, where that you sinning, you're turning away from it. So you're actually being controlled because you're turning towards those sins, those seven deadly sins, the thing that we were talking about before. And that's why they call it pride,
Mhm.
because pride is part of like one of the sins. And then if you go to Las Vegas, that's like they call it the city of sin, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The city of sin. So everybody, you go there because you have lust or you have gluttony or you have whatever, like you want to exercise that sin and excel.
Wrath, UFC.
You're turning your back on God. You think that you're being free, but you're being controlled. You're like you're it's like you're being chained to lust and gluttony and all these other sins that are attached to it. So that's not God doing anything to you. You're not free by sinning. You're in the sense that's what hell is. You're putting yourself in that
Mhm.
place. You're becoming an empty shell because you have no restraint in what you do. You're just you're I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
Well,
You're being controlled. You think you're being free by turning your back on God, but you're being controlled by all this other stuff that is sort of like human nature.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
An indulgent,
you're being controlled by your indulgence.
you're being
Kind of
controlled by
thing.
your indulgence.
Lower
That's why
mother.
they
Yeah.
call those nuns the perpetual nuns of indulgence, because they're essentially burning in hell perpetually. That's what it is. You indulging is just indulging to the point where you're in hell. You're being attached. It's like you have these chains to you for the rest of for your, not just like this life, but your whole existence. Like after you're done living here, your soul is still being pulled into that sort of like bottomless pit of hell.
I think too is
You're
that
on the journey to your. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say like we were saying like I think too people um are looking at things in the sense of like if I don't get the full amount of indulgence in this thing, then it's not worth going down that path. Like if it doesn't, if it's not a meal that's super delicious, I'm not going to eat it, or
That's so true.
and there's nothing wrong with pleasure. Like if I cook a
Right.
meal for someone, like my girl, my parent, my family, like I try to make it a very good meal, but I also try to make it a healthy one because I generally, I it's an expression of my love for them and stuff like that. But I also don't. I'm not against indulging here and there, but there's like this disconnect between like overindulgence and like taking some kind of responsibility and like I said, just every once in a while, you just need to eat a meal that isn't the best tasting thing, but it's good for you and it quenches your hunger for that day. Um, and yeah, it's the same thing with the sex stuff. It's like I have no issue with people if you're having sex with someone you care about. I mean, it doesn't have to be your wife; it could just be your girlfriend. But you know, in that moment, if you want to make your partner feel good in whatever way that that means, like that's good. It's just it's like now what, like I said, like it's like the responsibility is taken out, and now people just are so obsessed with the pleasure factor of it, and now it's just so
Abuse.
wild. Yeah, it's insane now.
Yeah, it's pure.
If you
Go ahead, Nick.
Uh,
go ahead.
well, yeah, it's a very abusive thing, and I just wanted to say that whenever if two people want to have sex, as long as it's mutually consent between them, it's completely fine. It's just the thing is, I think we get too caught up in the I would say that it's a little bit trivial, where we get caught up in like being in people's business on like if they're doing something too much, but at
Mhm.
the same time, uh you know it's like there's time. See, the way that I understand it is, if we're not being disciplined with our own self and overcoming those base desires. The ancient Egyptians called it the lower animal parts, because
Mhm.
it's about having those lower animal instincts and those lower animal desires. But as we raise into a human being and become more conscious of who we are and why we're here and all that stuff, well, then we start to, I think that's really for me in my own personal journey, that's where I have really started to appreciate this sexual relationship with my partner, because it means that I'm understanding why that even takes place. It's not just because I want to feel good. It's not just because I want to just be in a sexual act with someone. it's
Yeah.
it's it's not just because I want it's not a social status thing. That was my lower animal part when I was younger, and I understand that. But as I got older, I started to appreciate it, because I didn't appreciate it when I was younger. I was never taught anything about
Mhm.
appreciation or any I was very low in myself. I had no real consciousness of what was really going on in myself or around me or anything like that. So this whole the sin thing, I really liked what Jordan said about the sin with the mark. because there's truth to that. Because we have to understand, to sin means to miss the mark. So if you think about, the bullseye, the bullseye is one of the oldest symbols known to man, and that little point in the middle, the bullseye mark, is actually the symbol to help us understand this concept of what a sin is. Because to hit the mark means that you're not sinning. It means that you're going in the right middle path, right? To hit life right in the bullseye, which is, to go in the right direction. But to hit outside of that, if there wasn't a bullseye there, to miss the mark means to sin, and that means to go against what is good, what is God. And so, God is, if you look at God as a harmony in nature, right? We all have the ability to align to God or creator, whatever you'd like to call it, the ineffable name. If you align yourself in your thoughts, emotions, and actions, how you behave in the world, that is how we hit the mark. Because it helps us find the point of reality. It helps us find purpose. The purpose is the point. And so once we start to really understand that, we start to realize it's because we're aligning to this frequency, this harmony, that is causing good in the world. And just to describe the actual 7 deadly sins, which are murder, rape, trespassing, coercion, lying, stealing, and trespassing. These are all the true 7 deadly sins, because they actually harm someone. They actually hurt someone. And so if we use that in with common sense, we realize, like, oh, okay, these true 7 deadly sins are what we really need to understand. Because, see, the church, especially the Vatican, has really taught everybody these other deadly sins, or these other 7 or 10 sins. And the thing is that we have to understand that it is so much more than that. Because those other things like gluttony and pride and all these things, yeah, we have to overcome that. But pride is not going to hurt anyone. It's our action, it's our behavior that actually hurts someone. That is what causes disharmony. That is a true sin, because it misses the mark. It is a true sin because it actually goes against the frequency of the creator. Because the creator is a harmonizing frequency. There's a reason why we say harmony. Harmony is the thing that we can flow with. But it's like going with the current of a river. If you go in the current if you go with the current of the river, you're going with the flow of this the way the law is working, the way gravity is pulling. But if you go against the river, now you're going now life becomes harder. There's no more flow anymore. And it's a lot like that. Because it's about understanding that, when we are causing any kind of frequency that actually harms other people, then we are sending a frequency out, like the law of vibration. What goes around comes around. There's a reason for that saying, because we do get what we reap what we sow. And we have to understand how that works, not just because God says so. We have to understand the science of it. We have to understand that it is a science, and we can know that. But see, the thing is, the church leaves the science out because they don't want people to know that. They don't want people to know what their true power is. They just want you to have faith in God, and that's it. Just be good and believe in Jesus, and you'll get sent to the afterlife and all that. But it's like, no, there's so much more to it, and you're missing it because they're not giving you the full picture. So sorry.
That's okay. Do you guys think that like the sex part, that part of the problem is that it is relatively, admittedly, like a very difficult subject to explain. Like that's one of the main things about like the kind of teaching kids about gender ideology thing, because it's a hard subject to to introduce to someone. And I don't like, for me, I don't want someone that isn't me to teach my kid about anything about sexuality, because but even, like, I have no idea how to do it, but there is this, like, I admit that it's a very difficult subject to talk about, and to balance like the pleasure part, but also the the meaningful procreation part. And um, that's why I've been kind of on like this weird mission to ask like Christians if they know of any kind of like form of media that teaches people about sex, about pleasure, but like is still palatable for the Christian audience without it being prude or super safe, or like Nate said, like, oh, it's a sin to do this. Like, it's something that just is open but still celebrates life, but also doesn't ignore the pleasure aspect of it, but also balances the responsibility that it comes with sexuality. Because I understand the argument for someone on a simple level of like of saying you should not have sex before marriage, because there's just a lot of responsibility that comes with sex that I think people just forget about. Like, pregnancy is a really hard thing. Like, there's a domino effect of issues that come with it, but and there's also the attachment that comes with it, and uh, like there's other things I can't even think of that are difficult to come with the topic of sex. But a lot of it's just, it is a hard subject to kind of just talk about with people without it being just full blown porn talk. You know what I mean? So
I learned a lot from listening to Loveline with Dr. Drew back in the day, just listening to
yeah, I
people
remember that
call
shit.
in
Yeah.
with their relationship and various problems. You can learn a lot about relationships by listening to people's problems,
Hmm.
and it wasn't always the most graphic, so that was a pretty good resource for me. A lot of our discussion has been circling around the distinction between the ideal and just the good. Um, and so the good and bad binary, which I referenced earlier with the church, is just it's a binary, it's a spectrum. So like more sex, like everything else being equal, more gratifying sex in life versus no gratifying sex in life. One is very clearly good, one is very clearly bad.
Hmm.
Having a friendship that fizzles out in a day, or having a lifelong friendship is good. Fizzling out in a day is bad.
Hmm.
Having uh, a deep connection with another person that has depth and richness, you really get to know each other, is a good thing. And having a shallow, meaningless, you know, surface level relationship with someone is a bad thing.
Hmm.
The ideal is not to just have any one of those goods, but to have a lifelong friend that you have a deep connection with, that you have a great sex life with, in the form of your husband or wife. That's the ideal. It's all of the best parts of all of the different dimensions all brought together with the right purpose. And then you could add on, you're having kids, so you're carrying through the generations, continuing your legacy, trying to increase the level of humanity by starting with the new generation and going up. And you could just keep adding things. And it all culminates to, if you could find the right person at a young age and approach the relationship the correct way, where you screen for values and principles and a common vision for the future before sex comes in, and you can find the right person before you get blinded by pleasure, and then you're with that person, and then you go through and have that family. That's the ideal, and that's the one current, that's the one path, that's the one trajectory that the rules of the church were designed to just try to guide you into the right choices. And the sins are just things that will, get in your way, obstacles on the path towards that ideal life, as Nate was talking about. And what he referenced with the seven really ultra deadly sins,
Hmm.
you could call crimes more than sins, because again, sin, you can miss the bullseye by an inch, and that's a sin, and you can miss the actual little circle entirely and shoot the guy behind you, and that's a sin. But what he was talking about with murder and rape and some of those other things, those are the crimes, the true, when the bad gets so severe that it approaches evil. That's
Yeah.
being gluttonous is not evil, but it is a shortcoming that will keep you from your ideal self.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. I guess we kind of should start winding down. Past the hour. I don't know. I guess if anyone has any like last thoughts they want to bring up about this, sex and religion thing. Anybody? If not, that's
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, I think we hit some pretty good points, and I think everybody definitely put some good stuff on the table. So
Yeah.
I agree. This is a good one.
All right.
Yeah, I think they hit the mark.
Yeah,
Here's you guys talking about the
hit
bullseye.
mark on this.
that's right.
Just make sure you guys hit the bullseye.
Yeah, that's right.
Hit it.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess. So let's just go around. Plug anything we want to. Nate, you want to plug anything?
Yeah. So hopefully you guys could make it to the Trivium Freedom Under Natural Law 3 conference. It's the third of its kind. So it's the title is the Trivium Conference, and it's a free online conference with I think well over 25 speakers, and everybody is talking about anything from consciousness, natural law, freedom, morality, symbolism, the ancient Egyptian mysteries, mystery traditions, so many different things that have some kind of effect on the people of this world. And, it's really all about helping us, become more aware of who we are and what this world really is and what's really going on, and so many great like minds, so many great minds with great information, and you can only learn from these people. You can only benefit from going to this conference. And I'm going to be giving my presentation called Oculus, which deals with a symbol. Probably, I don't want to say it's the most ancient symbol, but it is one of the most ancient symbols known to man. And I'm going to be teaching how this symbol can help us better understand natural law and freedom and truth a lot better. Spirituality. It's a very, very condensed presentation, and I'm really excited for it. And it is going to air at 10:40. I assume this show is probably going to come out a lot later. But anyway, you can definitely go to freedomundernaturallaw.com, and you can check out all the presentations there. And it's just a gold mine of great knowledge, great information. But also, there's another conference coming up in September, the 23rd through the 24th, and it's called Seed 5 Metamorphosis. And I'm going to be giving a presentation called Earthbrain 2, The Sacred Trace. And it's another symbolic presentation that helps us further understand our, where we really come from and how our mind is positioned according to the poles of the earth. So this is going to be a really awesome conference, and just tons and tons of knowledge that's so beneficial and can really inspire anyone who's really a seeker for truth. So that's all I got.
I was going to ask, after the conference, are you going to be able to post your presentation on your own platforms? Or
yeah,
okay,
yeah. So my presentation is already pre-recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is that it's going to be sent out live, and there's going to be a live feed where people can go and comment and have conversations during all the presentations. It's going to be very interactive, and I definitely recommend at least checking it out. Just go look at it, see if it's something you'd like to invest time into. And also, yeah, my presentation will be up on in YouTube or Odyssey and the other platforms, and I can next time I come on here I can let people know where to find that.
Cool.
So that you can actually find all my presentations at cubbyhole.com. That's CUBBYWHOLE.com. You can actually see it on the screen. So yeah.
All right, cool. Jordan, you want to plug anything?
Nope. I hope you folks enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Okay. Thank you. Benevolent, any last words before we head out?
No, I'm good.
All right. I guess just be on the lookout for more vending events for me in the summer, and I do plan on making more solo videos also in the summer, just random thoughts. So be on the lookout for that. And all right, let's just leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being here. This was fun. Good talk. Yeah, I will end it there. See you guys. Peace.